storms as opposed to Paducah. So the weather services have their boundaries as well. This, you can see, is what we've been watching for the last, probably half hour, 45 minutes. Two distinct couplets showing up on this, and this is where we had the potential for seeing the tornado. So sort of that little gap, and then they've got time because we mentioned as you work your way toward Owensboro, this was one part of the storm, this was the other. That's where we had the couplets that would be the rotating parts of that storm. Let me put on the velocity. It's easier to see when we look at the velocity, and I'm just going to take all of the reflectivity off. Two areas, 1 and 2. And that's the general zone of the first tornado warning that stretches it into our area. So there's time to take cover. If you're in Breckenridge, Hancock, or Perry counties, that's Perry County, Indiana, Hancock, and Breckenridge in Kentucky, you need to take cover. This is your prepared time. And I should mention, let me move the radar because it doesn't impact all of Breckenridge County. That's a fairly large county that we serve, and I'll get you the details on the warning here. That warning is going to go, let me look at the time. Well, first of all, let me tell you that they're all moving at about 50 to 55 miles an hour, so they're moving fast. If you're in McQuady, Hardensburg, down toward Rough River, you're outside of the warning, technically. It's across the extreme northern part of Breckenridge County. This would include Sunny Corner, right along areas of US 60, Stevensport, over toward Tell City. Those are the areas that would be included in that warning as it moves off to the east. And that warning goes until 11:45 tonight. So we're at 11:23 now. We're going to keep with it another 20 minutes or so with that warning passing by. Let's go over to Tawana Andrew. I'm going to reset my view here, Tawana, and I know that the velocity on this is something that you and I were looking at in the last commercial break because it's like, ooh, it's tightening up not in one but two places.
Yeah, so we have back-to-back in terms of these storms right now across portions of the Tell City area, and then of course we have that secondary one that's moving in towards Owensboro. So let's take it full so we can take a close look at what's going on if possible. So right towards the Owensboro area, that is where we've been seeing the heavy rain. This is where we already had that initial storm move through. We were watching that velocity, so basically that strong rotation moving through that area, and also seeing another batch now moving north of the Owensboro area as well. So let's just look a little bit more at that velocity. As Kevin mentioned, we are keeping an eye on one batch that is still just to the southwest of Owensboro, so just north of Handyville. So we're going to keep an eye on that right there. So just south of Griffith, which is exactly where the previous rotation moved right over. And then if we move a little bit further off toward the northeast, this is where we're seeing that second rotation showing up. This is going to be south of Grandview to near Cynthia. So if you have any family or friends in that area, give them a heads up. I know we have quite a few people in the building who have family in that area. So if you're listening, make sure you're giving them a heads up about what's coming their way in terms of that. So as we head forward, as Kevin mentioned, we have until 11:45 Eastern time in terms of this upcoming tornado warning. So that covers Tell City, Chambers, Dodd, Cloverport. I know we have quite a few viewers in Cloverport that like to continue to give us updates in terms of what they're seeing. So continue to do that and be safe. We also have Stevensport, Derby, Leopold included in this tornado warning as we continue to watch that rotation, which I'm going to circle it so you can see it a little bit better. So we're keeping an eye on the Cynthia area, Lewisport. This storm has had, of course, quite a bit of rotation, quite a bit of strong winds so far, and we're going to continue to keep an eye on that throughout the rest of the night. So this tornado warning, just making sure everyone is aware, this is going to last until 11:45 p.m. Eastern time. Once again, it does include Tell City, Stevensport, Cloverport, as well in the very northern fringes of Breckenridge County. And for those of you further to the north, and we've been talking about the tornado warning, but some heavy rain, Kevin, also moving into portions of southern Indiana as well. So we have to keep an eye on portions of Meade County, Harrison County, as well as this continues to track off towards the northeast.
Yeah, really a wind maker, regardless of how you cut it. So while we may see some hail embedded in these storms, it really is all about the wind. On the big board, the tornado showing in our viewing area, Breckenridge County, under that warning. It's northern Breckenridge for another 19 minutes on the warning. You can see it here clearly. 11:45 is is the expiration time. That storm is radar indicated. We have had some tonight that have actually been on the ground and observed by storm spotters. This one is just radar indicated. You'll notice the lightning with these storms. I'll take the lightning off. I'm going to forward through. We haven't had a whole lot of damage. Some limbs broken there. These are the MPING reports coming in. So some trees have been snapped. We see your reports as you report them, and we appreciate them. They're very helpful, especially in times like this. If you are in the warning, northern Breckinridge County, Hancock County, Perry County, find your tornado safe place. That's a basement or a storm shelter. It is the lowest level. It's in the interior part. It's away from from the windows. You got to get away from these outside walls. Find yourself in the middle. That is usually a bathroom. It can be a closet. It could be a hallway. It could be under the stairs. Protect your head. That's where you want to be for the tornado. We have had the watch in place for hours. That just means severe weather is possible. Keep an eye out. Listen in. That's where we have been. Now we have the warning, and that means it's happening. You've got to seek shelter immediately. You want to make sure you know what to do and where to go. We've got wind gusts to 38 miles an hour. Owensboro reporting wind gust at 43 miles per hour. All of us have seen at least some gusty winds today, and they're going to get even stronger tonight and tomorrow. Tomorrow, wind gust even higher than some parts today. We've got plenty of moisture. These are dew point values, giving us an indicator that we still have plenty of moisture in the atmosphere to work with. The winds are strong, reminding you of the tornado warning until another 17 minutes for Breckinridge, Hancock, and Perry counties until 11:45. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the warning for us. I suspect that should this hold together, we will continue to see that moving off to the east. Parts of Meade County would be next impacted. I want to show you what's happening across the entire region. Going to take the lightning off. Let's go back out as we look inside each of these showers and thunderstorms to the north with potential for strong wind in many of those areas. We could be seeing across parts of southern Indiana some strong winds. The strongest that we have are obviously with these storms back to the west of us approaching, possibly with some hail. You can start to notice those deeper magenta or purple colors. That's where we have some hail potential that would be falling across that region. When we look inside the storms through the velocity, we can see the rotation much better. Remember, we said we had two areas that we were watching with rotation. Let me just put our velocity on here, and I'll show you what that looks like. As we scan the storm, you can see there's one crossing near Tell City. So we've got a little couplet there. When we back it back, there's another one right along the river. So we're sort of just bobbling back and forth on the river as this moves off to the east. Moving fairly fast, this storm moving off to the east on the order of about, what was the latest on that, Tawana? Is it 55 or 65 miles an hour?
This storm is actually 70 miles per hour.
70.
So let me turn that back on. About 70 miles per hour in terms of how quickly this storm is moving. And just got word from the National Weather Service in Paducah. So far towards the Owensboro area, they haven't gotten any reports of any damage, but this is something that they're still going to be watching. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. But in terms of the timing of these storms, because remember, they're moving faster than highway speeds across portions of course, what we're seeing right now in portions of northern Breckinridge County towards parts of even southern Indiana. We have to keep an eye on this as this is all moving off towards the northeast. So looking at the timing of this, in about 2 to 3 minutes, is going to be moving towards the Tell City area. So you already need to be in your safe space if you're listening to us from there. Corden, a heads up, this should be towards you as we approach 12:05 a.m. Palmyra about 12:13, and towards the Louisville area as we get closer to 12:22. So this is moving very, very quickly, and we've been keeping an eye, of course, on the rotation, on the heavy rain. The hail not as much of a threat, but the straight line winds, in addition to everything, could certainly cause an issue as we continue throughout the night. So just a better look at what we're seeing. Of course, we have those 2 severe thunderstorm warnings, but the main issue is that tornado warning that will last until 11:45. 5:45 p.m. But keep in mind, if you're out ahead of the storm, so I want the northern portions of Meade County, so we're talking north of Brandenburg up towards Leavenworth, also towards English. If you're south of English, I want you to be paying attention to the storm because it is racing off towards the northeast cordon. Just a heads up as well. I want you to be paying attention to the storm since it is moving so quickly, Kevin. And that's one thing with these storms that we've seen today across parts of Arkansas all the way into our area. They have been moving incredibly quickly. And that is something that we want to make sure everyone is aware of, because if you're not paying attention, these can be moving to your area and you're not fully aware of what's going on. And we want everyone to be weather aware as we continue throughout tonight.
And part of that happens to be because of the strong belt of wind that we have ongoing. We call that the low-level jet that increases at night, and that's what's enhancing these storms and helping to propel them. And when you start getting storms moving at 60 to 70 miles per hour, there's little reaction time, even though the National Weather Service is being proactive, issuing the warnings far in advance. The good news is none of these showers or thunderstorms to our north are producing severe weather at this time. Back to our north, up around Indianapolis, severe thunderstorm warnings are ongoing. Again, let me just pan through, and then we're going to zoom into a few areas. I want to point out the showers and thunderstorms stretch all the way back into Illinois. You start to get these bowing segments, strong wind. So despite the fact that I mentioned no severe weather across southern Indiana just yet, that doesn't mean the potential doesn't exist. Remember, all along we've said as you work your way east of I-65, things will be easing back just a bit. The good news is, while some areas have had to deal with a whole wall or string of severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings, we're just having to deal with this one right now. So that's good news. That means things, because of the earlier rain we've had, the cooler temperatures we've had, our atmosphere is not as out of control, so to speak, as what is surrounding us, both across Indiana, back across Illinois, down into Missouri, and even western parts of Tennessee. They've had it really bad tonight. All right, back inside to the storms. I'm going to zoom in, and let's just track the greatest rotation with this as it really starts to approach our area. I'm going to zoom in close. You're going to see it. You'll notice in the reflectivity some of these bows or little, I mean, they almost look like hills, right? That's where we have some of the stronger wind. So now, as we look inside that storm, we can look through our scopes and look at the velocity. And when we look at velocity, we're looking at the wind. Velocity means both direction and speed. So that's what we need to know if we're looking for the potential for that tornado. And I'm just scanning the tornado itself in terms of the warning. And you can see general wind. And then you get to this area, a little bit of a couplet there, but it is weakening somewhat. So that's some good news. Again, I'm not sure this is going to get extended. We'll wait and see. As these storms sort of cycle through, sometimes it increases in intensity, sometimes it decreases. We could be in one of those decreasing modes at this point, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to stay like that. All right. So that's the wind velocity that we have going on within that one storm. Lots of lightning with all of these. I can hear the thunder even downtown. We don't have thunderstorms hardly nearby, so they're loud. And we're going to continue to see the showers and thunderstorms move through with gusty winds regardless of any kind of warning. In fact, you'll notice our gust at Louisville International is 38 miles an hour right now. The only warning we have in the viewing area goes for about another 10 minutes. That's the tornado warning that includes the extreme northern part of Breckinridge County. Again, I just keep sort of rolling through this. Let me point out the reports that we've had. We can really get a lot of good information based on viewers like you, frankly. We have the radar. That's helpful. But to know what type of damage is actually happening between the reports we get and looking at the radar imagery, we're sort of just guessing what could happen. You'll notice the branches broken down over toward the Evans or Owensboro area. So that was one report that we received. That's good to note. Again, you can see where that is in relation to the storms. That means this line of storms that's warned for both severe and tornadic weather happens to produce some strong winds that can at least damage trees, perhaps even knock down power lines in some cases. I mentioned the basement deal. You've got to get to the lowest level if you can. Pointing out that the wind is strong all across the area with any of these storms is important because you don't have to have necessarily even a severe thunderstorm warning to see some of these strong wind gusts. 40, 50 miles an hour can happen with just some of these rain showers and thunderstorms ongoing across Indiana. Tawana, I see you're zooming into that general area with that storm. Again, let's just give some specific locations and times as we're tracking this across northern Breckinridge County.
Yeah, we're watching the speed of this because, as we were talking about earlier, this is moving incredibly quickly at 70 miles per hour. So this is racing along right now as it moves off towards the east and northeast. So what we're looking at in terms of the time frame of this, let me break that down for you so you're able to see what's going on in terms of this. So we're keeping an eye on this Tell City storm as it moves off towards the northeast. So in terms of time frame, Redelia, you're going to be near, it's going to be near you around 11:49 p.m. That's going to be Eastern time. Leavenworth is going to be closer to you 11:58. Corden closer to you 12:07. So this is moving very, very quickly. Keep in mind this warning lasts until 11:45. So we're going to keep an eye on that. And one thing that the National Weather Service did point out is that the storms are moving faster than the energy that's available to them. So they're kind of just speeding along, which is going to really cause them to outrun what's fueling them, which can help to weaken them a bit. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And also got in a report of 64 in the Fairfield area as some of these storms have moved by. There was a construction sign that is blocking the roadway. So that's 64 eastbound in west of Fairfield. That's where a construction sign was blown into the roadway. So police are on scene trying to get that cleared out as well as this continues to race to the east, because the last thing we want is, of course, people in these storms stuck in traffic, Kevin. And we're still dealing with that traffic issue in Bullitt County as well that we're watching too. That 65 shut down, still keeping an eye on that. But yeah, these storms are racing along pretty quickly this evening, and it's something that we have to watch. But we've been talking about this for quite a while. If anybody was watching us on streaming earlier this evening, how as these move further to the east, there's just not as much energy available to them, especially if they're moving this quickly. So this actually bodes well in our favor as the night goes along.
Yeah, important also to point out the warnings back to the west too. These storms are also being tornado warned, or severe thunderstorm warned, with the tornado potential. So if we were to look at that closer, that black outline tells us that it's still possible to have some rotation, but it's a severe thunderstorm warning with the tornado possible tag. That's across southwest Indiana, not far from Patoka Lake. So that area as well. That's the front itself. This is out ahead of it. These will race off, moving at 70 miles per hour. These are going to breeze through the area fairly fast. Many of them not producing many problems. Now, what will happen with this next batch is by that point, the atmosphere is worked over and we've again exhausted the atmosphere with the energy. So these will likely be on the weakening stage too. So the good news is while we're dealing with a tornado warning for northern Breckinridge County, parts of Hancock and Perry counties of Indiana, at this point, the trend would be to continue weakening these storms as they pass by. Does that mean we all escape without severe weather? No. It means that at least the trend is showing that that should weaken as it moves past. But for now, we still have strong storms around. We still have a very powerful belt of wind above our heads. And if we pull any of that wind down, which can happen with any thunderstorm, and certainly it can cause some problems because we're talking wind speeds in excess of 70 miles an hour in that instance. So again, let's just look back. Let's recheck the storm. This is sort of just checks and balance. We zoom in, we zoom out, we take a look at the velocity. Let's do that with this storm that we're watching across northern Breckinridge County. Tough to pick out the defined rotation on the reflectivity. Usually much easier to do when we look at that rotation. So I'm just going to put the whole velocity on here and let's just see. Tough to sort of pick that out even with this scan. You know, we're usually looking for reds and greens together, and that indicates the velocity toward the radar, away from the radar. You get that in a very close proximity. That's the rotation we look for. Again, you can see from Tell City over toward Gerald, that zone is some strong wind, but not a ton in the way of rotation with that at this point. Back to our radar view. And you'll notice, again, heavy rain, yes. Potential for hail, small chance. But we have seen some hail with these storms earlier within the last hour or two. But these are moving very fast off to the east, and they will be producing some gusty winds. Pointing out in Louisville that we've had 38-mile-an-hour wind gust in the last report. Let's go back to our home view. And as we just sort of are letting people know, the tough part is at night trying to get people's attention, because some people have been out to dinner. They're not tuned into the weather. They didn't know it was an alert day. Now it's like, hey, you need to pay attention. We've got these storms moving through. This one in particular has some strong wind with it. It certainly had a much more pronounced couplet on that velocity, which would have indicated that, yes, there could be a tornado there. That has weakened. We'll see what the Weather Service decides to do. This goes for another 4 minutes on this warning. And at this point, we're not seeing signs that the warning is going to be extended into parts of Meade County, at least not yet. The National Weather Service, obviously, they're busy too, and we just wait for those warnings to pop out. But I wouldn't be surprised to see part of this line with severe thunderstorm warnings because of the wind that's moving through. And we have seen some intense wind all along this belt, and especially across northern parts of Indiana and back down to the south of us. Meanwhile, when we look at what's happening in Louisville, you can see we haven't even seen the rain move in yet. That's still back to our north and west, but it will move in within the half hour. We were on our live stream earlier and we said, probably at about that time that news is getting to an end. 11:30 to 12:30 would be the time those storms arrive here. So the timing of that's pretty good. The threat of severe weather is not zero, but it's lower as you move off to the east. And again, these are just one round of storms. We've got another one sitting behind it. Let's go over to Tawana Andrew, who's keeping an eye on some of the wind and the storms behind this initial line.
Yeah, keeping an eye especially on what's happening west of Evansville, because I have been seeing some reports of some strong winds in that area, so towards Patoka. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. And then up towards 400 south in parts of Indiana, getting reports of a house collapse. So that's well off to our north, but it's still something that just shows you the strength of these storms as they move through. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that closely as the night goes along. And also, don't forget, even though you may not be underneath a severe thunderstorm warning, you're still probably getting some rain. So taking a look at the radar, seeing some of that rain around portions of Bullock, near Butlerville towards Seymour, some very heavy rain just to the south of Seymour. So anyone traveling near Uniontown on 65 is certainly going to be dealing with some very low visibility there. Also towards Palmyra, down towards Leavenworth, some very heavy rain embedded in these storms and some gusty winds as well. So that's something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on. If I turn on the velocity, where you see those streaks of green, let me zoom in a little bit better for you, towards the Leavenworth area, that just shows like basically a wall of wind moving in with those storms in that area. So this is what are we talking about? It's not just a tornado threat, it's that strong wind threat that we have to watch as well as these storms continue to race off towards the east as well. So that's something we're going to keep an eye on. In addition to that, I've been noting some more of those thunderstorms popping up further to the south of that line. So out ahead of the line of thunderstorms, we're seeing another batch of some thunderstorms and showers popping up towards the Radcliffe area, the E-Town area as well. And this is a spot, Kevin, that has been dry and pretty warm for most of the afternoon and evening. So we'll have to keep an eye on how much these can tap into the atmosphere as the night goes along as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on multiple parts of wave country, not just where that tornado warning.
Yeah, for sure. This is going to be a couple of hour deal for us, not necessarily with tornado warnings, but at least with the threat of strong wind. Tawana, would you mind putting up the Corridon camera? I see some flashes of lightning in the downtown camera.
I can do that.
It's getting ready to get just hit by a wall of wind, as you pointed out. I'm going to zoom into this general area, anywhere from northern, say, Crawford County, all the way down into parts of Breckinridge County has the best potential for that wind that we've been mentioning. And that, of course, includes the area that's warned for the tornado warning. The strong to severe thunderstorms, I mean, this is the wall of water, of course. I zoomed in, I was a little aggressive on the zoom there. So let me just go back home. Sometimes it's best just go home. And then now let me zoom back in to that area, and we won't go in as tight. When we look at this general zone, we're then going to put the velocity on. You'll see that that's what I want to show. And where it's sort of bowing is where we see some strong winds. I'm just going to overlay the whole velocity here. And strong winds approaching Leavenworth, that's going to move toward Corridon. Strong winds, a pocket of wind just north of Rodelia. We've got this strong wind just off to the west of Gerald. That's going to push through. There's not a real marked sign of the rotation like we had seen before. Again, no signs that this is even going to be warned. And there goes the warning. So at this point, what is the time? It's 11:45. The warning expired on time. Let me go back. And I'm going to go back to our radar view here. The tornado watch is still in place. all warnings have expired, going back to our home view. And we have a decision to make here. As these storms approach Louisville, I don't want to just cover up programming for the fun of it. We've been on all night talking about the threat of severe weather, and we've been pretty consistent in our messaging. In fact, we've been real consistent in our messaging, saying as these storms move east, they would be weakening. We've been saying that for 2 days now, and that seems to be the trend. Now, that doesn't mean, as we move this across an environment that hasn't been worked over as much, even though we've had some rain earlier across central Kentucky, doesn't mean we won't see an uptick with some strong winds in places. I really think that's the biggest problem. But right now, as we looked at that velocity, you can see that there's no major couplets to talk about. I'm going to make sure that we can get through tonight and not have everybody worried. So I'm going to stay with the weather just to see let's give the radar a couple more scans. It takes a couple of minutes for it to scan every layer of the atmosphere. And let's just be sure that we actually see things easing back. If that indeed is happening, we'll get you back to the late night programming that's on. In the meantime, I think most of you probably want to know what's going on with the weather. I know it's going to sound a little repetitive because we haven't seen a ton going on across the viewing area, especially southern Indiana, where we've had just rain. That's not the case to the north. They have been hit hard with severe weather up that way. Let me just sort of pan the radar up. Tawana, go ahead. What do you have?
I just wanted to let you know that Shelby and Henry counties have just been added to the tornado watch that lasts until 3 a.m. And then the National Weather Service is now keeping an eye on that line of storms, the one that we're talking about, in terms of the wind moving towards the metro. Really just pointing out the potential for 55-mile-per-hour wind gusts and even that chance for some small hail as well in those areas. So that batch of storms that we're watching is this area from Borden all the way back towards New Amsterdam. That is where we can see some of those stronger wind gusts and even that potential for a little bit of hail. So I'm going to circle that for you on your screen right there in that particular area. So from very northern Meade County all the way up in the portions of Floyd County and very western Clark County included in this. A lot of lightning. We've seen very heavy rain and, of course, those strong winds, all things that we have to watch as the night goes along, because we've been talking, yes, a lot about tornadoes, Kevin. I think that's the thing that freaks people out a little bit more, but the straight line winds are also going to be a factor throughout the night as well. I want to make sure we don't discount that as the night goes on too.
If there's one thing we know about this year, it's been the wind. It's the wind,
it's
right?
The wind.
We can get wind in two ways, straight line winds or rotating winds. The tornadoes both are doing damage when they bring it all the way down to the ground. We also have that camera behind me that you can see, and that's from Corydon. That's really showing some lightning. It's going to show some heavy rain as it moves in. I've zoomed down. There's Corydon here. The heaviest of the rain is about to move in. Let's just watch that. I think
that camera is shaking right now as well.
We're going to notice these trees start to be impacted by that wall of wind. And we're also going to notice the rain pick up just a bit. Right now, they're seeing just some light showers down toward Corydon. That tornado warning, by the way, north of us sits just off to the south and east of Indianapolis. Severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings extend all the way up past Fort Wayne. That zone, again, seeing some strong thunderstorms with some rotation. Farther to the south, no warnings in southern Indiana in our viewing area, and no warnings right now across our Kentucky counties. We have the thunderstorms back across southwest Indiana. Yes, that storm has had a history of producing some gusty winds. The storm that we're watching move closer to Corydon right now has the potential. I'm going to zoom into it for you, and we'll look at that velocity because you can see it as we pick that out moving in. And Tawana, you've already got it pulled up there. Let's go over to Tawana's computer, and you can show right behind you, Tawana, those wind gusts approaching the Corydon area.
Yeah, we're seeing wind gusts near 40 to 50 miles per hour embedded in the storm. So where you see that basically bright streak of green showing up from northern portions of Meade County all the way up towards Palmyra, that is that line of very strong winds with that storm that we've been talking about. So yeah, that straight line wind threat is still something we're going to watch. And yeah, on the radar, it's looking a little nasty there right now. So we're going to keep an eye on that. And then some pretty heavy rain showing up near Radcliffe as well, moving towards 65 in Bullitt County, right where we have a lot of people stuck in traffic right now because of the crashes that happened earlier this night.
Hopefully they can get out. We wouldn't want to see these storms move across them. The good news is wearing on through the night. Again, the heavy rain moves through. The wind will sort of be with us with the thunderstorms. But the wind eases until the sun comes up tomorrow. Give it a couple of hours to sort of warm things up, and then we're going to start to churn in the atmosphere. That cranks up wind tomorrow, 45 to 50 miles an hour at times through the late morning and early afternoon. No storms around, just some strong winds. Again, this is the year of the wind, it seems like, huh? All right, we take a look again, looking at the reflectivity. That's a narrow band of heavy rain moving fairly fast. It's approaching the western parts of Metro Louisville, certainly the northwestern parts of Floyd County. It's across northern Harrison County, stretching into northern Meade County. When we look at the velocity on this, you'll notice that area of green that Tawana's been pointing out. This is very strong winds moving through that zone. That is the Boeing segment. There are no warnings with it right now, likely just below severe limits, but that could change as it moves a little closer to us. John Bowl just popped in a second ago and he said, hey, we've had no reports of any kind of damage out of this. They're making calls to many of the folks in emergency positions out across the counties that have been impacted. So we've had no damage. That's the good news, because that hasn't been the case everywhere today. When you look at what happened in Little Rock and in parts of Iowa, northern Illinois, northern Indiana, we have had damage, and it's been intense in some areas. So this is playing out how we felt it would, meaning the weakening phase is here. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that it can stay in that weakening phase. And by the way, if it upticks, it would just be within the next hour or so that could even happen. So I think we're going to do pretty good with this deal moving past us. Let's go back to the home view. I'm going to put on the radar instead of the velocity just to show that wind moving through. The only severe thunderstorm warning, southwest Indiana, will soon expire. Otherwise, we're warning free. The tornado watch technically goes until 3 a.m. as we bring these storms through the Louisville area. The wind for us has been upwards of 40 miles an hour, 38 at the last report. We could very well see, as that moves in, another 40 to 45 mile per hour gust. That's going to be possible as that passes to the east of us. Tawana's looking through some of the social media reports that we get. Anything new on that?
I have not gotten any new reports, thankfully. I think nothing is a good thing, but something that we'll keep an eye on. For those of you in the Palmyra, the Cordon area, just keep us updated on whether or not you see any of these strong wind gusts safely. Of course, do it from inside, not outside. And we'll have to keep an eye on everything going on. And there's been quite a bit of lightning with a lot of these storms that we've seen throughout the overnight, but not as much as what we were dealing with further off to the west. So that's some good news. But notice in very northern parts of Meade County right now. So we're talking closer to Andyville, New Amsterdam. This is where we're seeing some very heavy rain, quite a bit of that lightning. And also, I want to point out some of those strong wind gusts. So if you're in that area, this is one of those situations where you want to make sure you're away from the windows and such, just because the wind, the straight line winds can be just as damaging as we saw. So we're going to want to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on that. Also, for the Cordon area, we're going to have to keep a close eye on that camera. If we can pull that up, I just want to show how much that is shaking at the moment and the amount of lightning with this line of storms that's currently moving in the Cordon, Shoals as well. So just very strong with that thunderstorm that's moving in.
And what a change since the last time we saw that, where it was raining lightly. Now you can see those flags barely hanging onto the pole. The wind is just blowing that flagpole intense. I mean, so that's some strong wind. We're probably looking at 40, 50 mile an hour winds, just estimating from what we're able to see.
And now the rain's starting to come down, so it's hard to even see what's going on as much in that camera. So yeah, this is what a lot of you are going to be dealing with. The night goes along is going to sound a lot worse than it actually is. I know a lot of those pets as well don't necessarily like this kind of weather as well, so give them their thunder shirts. Make sure they're with you as well. Make sure they're okay, the kids are okay, you're okay. Ooh, that was a lot of lightning right there. So the strong wind gusts is something else that we'll have to watch as the night wears on. But Kevin, this is we're going to be with everybody throughout the rest of the night. We're coming up on midnight.
Yeah.
So we're getting late and we're getting back to where I usually wake up.
Yeah, this is
in
normal for you.
This is this is my wake up time.
Right. There are no warnings out. That's the good news,
Yes.
at least in our viewing area. We have them just to our north around Indianapolis, out across southwest Indiana. People are like, why are you on? Here's why. A lot of people are probably just now waking up, want to stay on at least until midnight, get these storms into the Louisville area, make sure that they're going to stay just below severe limits. New warnings keep popping out to our north constantly, so it's not out of the question that we could see some strong winds here. As we get some measurements from these winds, once we feel confident that we can get you back to programming. Fact is, most people are interested in the weather today because we've had two areas of high risk outlined from the Storm Prediction Center back to the west. Part of our area was under that moderate risk, the rest of us enhanced. So it's been a day where we knew we could anticipate severe weather. If you've gone to bed and now you're waking up because the lightning is waking you up, or the thunder is waking you up, or the heavy rain is waking you up, we're here to just sort of hold your hand and walk you through what's happening. If you were watching earlier, we were on for almost 2 hours on our digital streams. We have a local weather channel called Wave Weather Now, and we were on just taking some questions, answering. It was a laid-back kind of severe weather chat. And what the theme of that was is, as these storms approached us tonight, they would be weakening. The question is, where would that weakening happen? Well, at this point, it happened right into Breckinridge County, because once those storms hit that, while we still have heavy rain and some gusty winds, there are no warnings, and that continues to push to the east. The forward motion of these storms at 60 to 70 miles an hour is outrunning any kind of juice they would need to even stay alive. So some good news there. The bad news is we've got another round of showers and thunderstorms that will come in later. I suspect that those will still stay below severe limits as well. However, the wind tomorrow is going to be howling, 45 to 50 miles an hour possible with that as it moves off to our east tomorrow. It's going to take some time, and that means strong winds from tomorrow morning, probably 9, 10 o'clock. We start to see that wind ramp up, but really midday into the early afternoon, 40, 50 mile an hour winds, at least wind gust, are possible. I'm going to take you on a little radar tour. We're going to zoom into this line as it moves into Louisville. Heavy rain now falling in Corydon. We have a camera there. Let's show it. We want to show you what's happening. This is what's going to happen here in Louisville, by the way. As these storms move closer to us, you can see the wind whipping the flags around. You can see the rain. The camera's bouncing a little bit. This is tolerable. Most of us are going to be able to handle this. Some of us don't have shingles on our roofs from the last windstorm, so it may cause issues with some rain coming in. But outside of that, you get woken by the thunder, the lightning, but the heavy rain is moving out. Now, that's something that we'll be watching as this rain passes by with the wind. I'm going to zoom into this line and let's just dissect it. We sort of have to check every so often to make sure we're not seeing any rotation anywhere, because it can happen as these storms move. I'm just going to zoom in about like that. Then I want to put on our velocity, and let's just go down that line. Obviously, we know it's raining, so you don't need to see the reflectivity. Velocity. We're looking for couplets. We're looking to see where there could be some gusty winds. Let me go back to our pan tool and we'll go down, and let's just go along that line. So follow this with me. This is what we'd be doing if we were sitting here behind the scenes, just kind of analyzing the radar. You can see the dividing line where we have some of those little nooks. That's where we have some gust of wind, and we're really going to notice that farther to the south. See that coming into parts of northern Clark County, not far from Borden, Scottsville, starting to pick up the wind. Same story, northern parts of Floyd County near Greenville. There's this line. There's that wind we talked about. That's a heavy pocket of wind there moving across southern parts of Harrison County. That's going to go just south of Corydon, perhaps Dogwood, New Middletown, as it moves closer to western parts of Jefferson County. So this is the wind that's moving in our direction. We move farther to the south. You can see as we get down not far from southern parts, well, right along the Ohio River that separates Harrison County from Meade County, very much near the Brandenburg area. We see that area of wind pushing through. So that's what we're dealing with. Farther to the south, again, additional winds pushing across parts of Meade County. Tawana, what do you have?
Just keeping an eye on what's happening behind the main line of storms that we're watching moving into our area right now, because that is with the cold front that's going to be moving through later on tonight. So we're seeing some of those wind gusts back towards Patoka, gusting to near 60 plus miles per hour. Also keeping an eye on what's moving towards the Bedford area right now with some of the stronger wind gusts as well. So that is going to be that second wave of rain after what we're dealing with right now. And also, if we can pull back up that Corydon camera, because I've been watching conditions just get a little bit deteriorate a little bit more over just the past 5 minutes. You can certainly see more of that heavy rain coming down, more of the strong wind coming down as well across the area. And then the lightning that continues with this. And this is going to be racing into the Louisville area shortly as well. So for those of you in Louisville and parts of Floyd County, Clark County, just making sure we're giving you a heads up with that in terms of that just racing off to the east. Because Kevin, these are moving so quickly, 60 to 70 miles per hour. That's slower than your drive, but it's still something that we'll have to continue to keep an eye on as the night wears on. And we're just continuing to keep an eye on what's happening in portions of Indiana as well towards Indianapolis. There's been quite a bit of power outages in that area as well. Oh, look at the rain just blowing along with that wind this evening. So yeah, we're keeping an eye. Corydon is just one of our cameras that we're going to be watching throughout the night. We'll be keeping an eye on the ones in Louisville as well, which I'm about to actually go switch and make sure they're pointing to the west at the moment so we can be ready for when that moves into the metro.
Well, and I was going to mention also, of course, we have one up in Starlight, Indiana. That one should be picking up some rain and wind as you work your way up into parts of Floyd and Clark counties. We're seeing that. So that's one zone. As we look, we have cameras across southern Indiana, one in New Albany, one over in Jeffersonville, one downtown. So we'll be looking at that storm as it moves in. But what you saw from Corydon is reminiscent of what's going to happen in many areas. You're going to see that big sort of push of wind. The heavy rain's going to come down. There are no warnings, folks. We're on because we know you're waking up and probably craving weather information. We want to be able to give that to you with the potential of these 50-plus mile-per-hour winds. It's sort of been a wild year when it comes to wind. So a lot of folks are, when we were on our 24/7 channel earlier and we were talking with so many, we can do that by social media. So many people were frightened and worried, and that's the last thing we want to do. If that's what you think this is about, then you're watching the wrong station. We're not going to scare you in what's going on. We're here to sort of just help you get through the night, and I'm not going to stay on all night. Once we get a couple of scans in, we're just after midnight. Once these storms roll through the most population that we serve, we'll get you back to the late night programming that's on. Until then, let us just walk you through what's happening. Again, most of the warnings are easing as expected, right on target. I mean, I-65 to the east, things have really calmed down. The storm's outpacing some of the energy back to the west of us, and that's good news. So we'll take it. You can see the heavy rain that's falling, but it's not lasting long, so flooding's really not going to be an issue with the forward speed of these storms. The biggest issue is the wind because of the big wind belt we have above our heads. We're still going to have that tomorrow, despite the fact that the storms will be long gone by tomorrow. The wind will not be. We have a wind advisory until 5 p.m. tomorrow. So a very windy Saturday is on the way with cool temperatures that keep us in the 50s. By the way, it's almost 70 right now. It's 69 degrees in Louisville. This marks maybe the high for the day at this point. So we're seeing some warm temperatures. We've got a juicy atmosphere pumping up southerly winds, bringing in that Gulf moisture. That's what we have seen across the area today. The threat of severe weather gets lower by the minute. Good news there. And again, as we look at some of the velocities, just to point out some of the heavier wind that we have along this belt, just bear with me. I'm going to zoom in and then we'll pan it around. I'm going to zoom into now we have a severe thunderstorm warning that's just coming out. This will include areas just out to the west of Louisville. So let's go to that. And again, we said we kind of thought this was going to happen, right? So that's why we're still here. The tornado possible tag comes with that. This is for Harrison County. This is watching that camera that moved through Corydon. So you saw that storm pass by Corydon. The Weather Service has access to all of our cameras too, by the way. So we're watching this storm, and that is the wind that we saw push through parts of central Harrison County. It's likely the reason they went ahead and issued the warning after seeing that wind speed potentially reach up to about 60 miles an hour. Remember, we estimated like 40 to 50. Could be as high as 60 in some places, so better to be safe than not. The warning came out. That includes Elizabeth, Mockport, and New Middletown. We pointed those locations out for you as this storm moves off to the east. That is the storm that would move closer to us. You see it here. It's going to move into western parts of Jefferson County. This is the wall of wind. It's those sort of of blues that you see that are the strongest winds, pockets of wind embedded in the line as it moves off to the east. This, by the way, is moving, looking, what's the speed of that one, Tawana?
The speed of the storm is 70 miles per hour.
Well, okay, so that didn't change either. 70 miles an hour, and that's impressive. So it's not going to last in one place long, but boy, it's quite a hit when it happens. Let's go to our SkyTrack cameras, and I know that we have the Hubert's Orchard Winery camera up. This is up in Starlight, Indiana. Some wind there, but and a little bit of rain. Doesn't look all that impressive. We'll focus the cameras back toward the west when we look in Louisville coming up in just a bit. We're probably still about a half hour away from having these storms move into the Louisville area. Again, the latest warning goes until 12:15, and that includes southern Harrison County, south of Corydon. It's for the wind. You can see that there. All right. Tawana, anything new? I'm just going to move the radar back up.
Just keeping an eye on the wind in portions of Jennings County and Jefferson County as well.
Notice our gust.
In Indiana, we just gusted to 45. Yeah, so it's been incredibly strong wind as well as we continue through the overnight hours. So we're going to keep an eye on that as the night goes along. So we're seeing some of that strong wind right now in portions of Jennings County and Jefferson County as well. And also seeing some of those wind gusts, not as strong as what we're dealing with towards Corydon right now, but still seeing some more of those strong wind gusts in parts of Clark County. So where you see that little border of the peach color and the red color, that shows us that's that strong wind moving past the Henryville area towards Charlestown. Also seeing a lot of that same moving from portions of Jennings County now towards Wakefield. And for those of you in northern portions of Jefferson County, you're in Indiana, while you are not underneath a warning, you're still dealing with some of those strong wind gusts. So we'll keep an eye on that. That is for sure as we head over the next 20 to 30 minutes for you. But of course, our focus right now continues to be what's happening in portions of Crawford County, especially, parts of Harrison County. This is where we're continuing to deal with this severe thunderstorm warning. And for those of you who may be just waking up and just tuning in, the severe thunderstorm warning for Harrison County, southern Harrison County, which does include Elizabeth, Mockport, and New Middletown, lasts until 12:15 a.m. That is Eastern time. There's a potential for some very small hail with this, some wind gusts near 60 miles per hour. Yes, we're watching that tornado possible tag on it as well. So it's mainly that straight line wind, Kevin, with this, but also can't discount that heavy rain. I think a lot of people were paying attention to the rainfall chances as well. So that's something we'll have to watch. And then I think there's a lot of people who are gearing up as well as we head into the weekend for pre-spring break travel as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on those trends. But that heavy rain is moving towards Louisville right now. So we'll be keeping an eye on the cameras, keeping an eye on the wind as it moves into the metro too. So we're probably going to see more of those gusts going up.
Yeah, let's jump to New Albany on the SkyTrack because it's moving right into there.
I will do that right now.
Again, we have that wall of wind, the heavy rain pushing through. We'll go from velocity back to the radar. I've just asked our team to get the storm tracker back online as well as these storms move across Floyd County and into Metro Louisville. We want to be able to show you what's happening as these storms push in. Will this be severe as it moves in? There's New Albany. All is fairly calm there right now, right? Well, at least for now. Give it another 2 minutes and let's see what happens. It's going to look like a different shot from that camera as this wall of water pushes in. Our camera's pretty much right there, right by the bridge at the riverfront and the amphitheater, so everybody knows where that is. So that's where our camera is. Lots of lightning coming in, lots of wind and rain as that pushes through. The warning is for the southern part of Harrison County. At this point, no other warnings have been issued, which next would include a good part of western Jefferson County, if that holds together. Still a little uncertain. Again, we're in the weakening phase, so it's hard to see these thunderstorms tick up unless we have ground truth coming in. That doesn't happen from the radar. That happens from a set of eyes or reports that may be given in terms of if there's any damage that's going on. It's why your reports are so important to us. If you have the Wave Weather app, easy to send reports. Scroll down, submit the photo, let us know where it is. Boom. We see it. We can pass that on to the Weather Service as well. Again, heavy rain along with some wind pushing through southern Indiana into western parts of Jefferson County from Portland down to Shively, eventually into PRP. That's the warning across southern Harrison County. It's the only warning that we have. That goes until 12:15, by the way. I'm going to put the velocity on. You'll see that narrow corridor of wind. That's the wind that we're going to be tracking into the area. That will be moving in along with some heavier rain. Our SkyTrack cameras are showing the wind over in New Albany now. You'll notice that with the lightning. Again, heavy rain starting to pick up. I said give it about 2 minutes. We're at about 1:45 here. And there comes the wind and the rain that's falling. So that's what we have going on. These are just below severe limits as it moves through the New Albany area. Likely very close to severe into parts of southern Harrison County. At this point, that's the only warning in 12:15. It's a severe thunderstorm warning. That's the strongest wind we have around the area. I'm going to go back to our home view. And as we zoom back out, I'm just going to put the radar back on. The good news is not just here, but across a good chunk of even central Indiana, the warnings are easing just a bit. While we still hold on to the one warning in southwest Indiana, a good chunk of those warnings that were in place are sort of fading away until you go farther to the north. And those are going to be translating over into parts of Ohio. One more tornado warning. Again, that one is just off to the east of Indianapolis. For us, pointing out, while we have showers and thunderstorms, the only warning that we have is the severe thunderstorm warning for southern Harrison County. Showers and thunderstorms continue off to the south as well. There are no warnings until you get some of these supercells just out to the west of Nashville. Some of these are strong. Those will be pushing closer to the Music City. But for us, gives you an idea of what we're looking at. The line is becoming a little bit weaker as it pushes past. The cooler temperatures and the rain from earlier today really helped out in terms of giving us a little bit of stabilization. Didn't stabilize us completely, or we wouldn't have to be worrying about even the few that we've had, where again, if you're sort of getting woken up by the lightning, the thunder, the heavy rain that may be falling, we're on just to sort of give you an idea and to really ease your mind about what's happening across the area, as opposed to all the excitement that has happened in other parts of the country today. It's been rough in Little Rock. It's been rough in parts of Iowa, northern Indiana. We've seen the damage coming out of those places. Nothing like that here. We have some gusty winds pushing through. Our latest gust at 45 miles an hour. Tawana?
Yeah, and keeping an eye on the power outages as well. That's something I've been keeping a close eye on for this morning. And if we can potentially take this storm tracker video, he's been saying that there is some strong wind in his area, plenty of lightning, as well as he's been moving towards the New Albany area. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. Thank you, Mark, by the way, for driving tonight. So we're going to be keeping an eye on what he's seeing on the storm tracker with a lot of the lightning and some of that heavy rain that he's currently dealing with and some of the gusty winds. But also getting back to what we're dealing with in terms of power outages, seeing around 500 people, a little over 500 people out of power in Jackson, Indiana, and also seeing, for those of you in Jennings County, some of you without power right now. So about a little over 200 people without power there as we continue to watch for more of those storms moving through. And power outages, Kevin, that's something we were concerned about for sure, especially with the strong winds, with some of these thunderstorms as they continue to push through the area. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on this. And keep in mind, yes, we've been focusing on that severe thunderstorm warning for those of you in southern portions of Harrison County, but we're also watching those of you further to the south towards Woodrow, E-Town, Hodgenville, where those storms are starting to develop in your area. You've been dry for a while, so you have a little bit more fuel compared to areas further to the north in terms of what can pop up later on tonight. So we'll be watching that closely. But as we head into the metro, yep, here comes that rain coming on down right now with, of course, that severe thunderstorm warning. No word on if they're going to extend that right yet. Let me scoot over to.
Yeah, at this point, no word on that. So
no word on that just yet, but we're going to be keeping an eye on that. And the wind is certainly with this, Kevin, I think is what's going to wake a lot of people up. Oh,
let's go back to the New Albany camera. The flags are whipping. And this is, again, what's moving through the metro. So give it another 5 minutes, and this is what's going to happen here. You're looking behind me at the storm tracker. I want to show New Albany on on the SkyTrack camera those winds. It's not going to last long wherever it happens. It's again moving fast, so it's a wall of water and then some very strong winds that are pressing through. And Tawana, if you'll adjust that to the Louisville camera, we'll be able to track that as well. And now Jefferson County is under the severe thunderstorm warning, so they've just extended that. It also includes a good chunk of Henry, Oldham, Shelby, and Trimble, and in Indiana, Clark and Floyd, and this is until 12:45. So that's the new warning that's coming out for that same storm we've been watching. There's the lightning that we've been keeping an eye on. We mentioned that the tornado remains possible. We've not had one on the ground, all radar indicated. If we could take the SkyTrack cameras, I want to be able to show what's moving in. And this is the downtown camera. This camera sits atop Waterfront Park Place. We're looking to the west. You're going to see the wind pick up along with, and Tawana, just kind of thumb through those. Here comes the rain increasing.
And I'm switching to the other shot of downtown.
All right, this one comes to us from over in Jeffersonville, atop the Harbors condominiums. You see the lightning. Heavy rain starting to push across downtown Louisville with those winds upwards of 45 to 60 miles an hour. And that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and we're going to be switching over to the airport looking towards downtown Louisville. And you can certainly see how that one's shaking as well. No real heavy rain there just yet, but you can certainly see the impact of that rain off into the distance. You should be able to see downtown Louisville there, but you can't because that rain is coming down so hard. And if I switch back over to the New Albany camera, I think you can see a little bit more of that rain just coming down right now. It'll give it one little second there. So we're seeing that rain coming down.
And we lost power
to that. Oh no, there it goes. So the rain not as heavy, but you can certainly see the wind doing its thing. And that certainly is going to slow down traffic on the bridges as well. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this. I'm going to adjust this camera, Kevin, to give us a little bit better view of what's happening closer to downtown New Albany, so everyone can see a better view of what's happening there.
And while you're doing that, let me just explain what's going on the radar for folks that may just be tuning in. We've been watching the storms moving through the Louisville area. We saw them across southern Harrison County. We said, okay, well, they have some potential with them. They haven't had a lot of reports. And as these storms moved into Louisville, we were uncertain if a warning would be issued or not. Clarification from the National Weather Service say, hey, this is a low confidence warning. It doesn't mean severe weather is going to happen, but because of the wind field aloft, we know what that looks like. If we tap into it and translate down some of those winds, 60, 70 miles an hour, we could have problems. So as it's moving across the population, they said, hey, let's go ahead and be proactive on this. We're going to go ahead and issue the severe thunderstorm warning just so we can sort of make sure that as folks are waking up, knowing what's happening, let's let them know that it's a potential, even though that potential is fairly low. Severe thunderstorm warnings continue until 12:45 for Jefferson. Most of that is moving out of Floyd County. Clark County would still be in that, at least the far eastern parts of Clark. It includes all of Oldham County, most of Henry County, and a good chunk of Shelby County as this wall of water and wind come in. Again, looking downtown at our SkyTrack camera, if you're in, say, St. Matthews, if you're in Okolona, this is what's coming your way.
This is downtown right now. We should be able to see the Yum Center and all the buildings a lot better than we can right now. That just shows how heavy that rain is as it's moving through. So if you had a lens alert, you probably just got the text like I did about that severe thunderstorm warning as well. So visibility, and that lightning is going to be an issue for a lot of people traveling. And Kevin, we were talking about, of course, the issues that we were seeing on 65 in terms of that crash earlier in the night. So that is where we're actually starting to see some more of those that little bit more of that heavier rainfall pushing towards that area as well. So you got to keep an eye on some people who may be still stuck in a little bit of that traffic. But yeah, that heavy rain is just taking over Louisville right now, and starting to see some more of that heavier rain as well further to the northeast. A couple of severe thunderstorm warnings just outside of Jennings and Jefferson counties. So we missed with that, but still seeing some gusty winds in that area as well, just especially north and south of Madison with those thunderstorms moving through there.
Yeah, and those warnings include Ripley and Switzerland counties, places like Vevey, Indiana, on up toward Johnson. That is the zone, again, outside of the viewing area. What we're looking at is what's moving across Louisville. Heavy rain, but it's already starting to ease up just a bit downtown and in New Albany. The storm tracker is out on the roads. Let's take a view from Mark Wilson's vantage point. He's been keeping an eye on what's happening. Again, moving across parts of the metro with heavy rain, some gusty winds, but all in all, we are escaping and dodging the bullet of severe weather today when you look at what's happened across the country. And it's, we talked about this throughout the entire day. As we said, the storms would approach, they would be weakening. That is still the phase they're in. I know the warning came out. It's a marginal warning. It's there with what the Weather Service has classified as low confidence, but hey, nonetheless, if the winds come down to the surface, we're going to have some problems. At this point, we've had none. And I think that most people, once we get past the thunder, the lightning, and the heavy rain, will rest easier tonight, at least in our viewing area. Northern Indiana, parts of Iowa, out toward Little Rock, Arkansas. Those are all places that have been hit very hard with severe weather. And in fact, a lot of damage. So we're going to hear, you heard about it some earlier, but you're going to hear a lot more about it in the next 12 hours, I'm sure. Back to our home view, as we zoom out, I'll just point out that these are some of the IMPING reports that we get from you. Anybody can submit the reports. They're very helpful to us. You can see some of the trash cans being blown over. These are twigs and trash cans, limbs being broken off across parts of Harrison County. That would be another likely reason that warning was extended. Once you start to see some of the tree limbs, note the icons there, being snapped, that becomes an issue of wind upwards of 50 to 60 miles an hour. That's severe thunderstorm potential. Trash cans and twigs in a lot of places. But no uprooted trees, nothing's destroyed. So some good news there, at least in our viewing area. That's one of the images that we use to find reports. When we look at other reports, we can look at some of the reports from the National Weather Service. Not a whole lot being reported. Good news there. When we look at some of the rain that we've had across the area, we go back to our reports. We can look MSD totals. We'll just zoom into the metro. Now, this reset at midnight, so that's a little misleading. Let me go back and see if I can put on the reports of rain from the Mesonet sites, and this will give us a better idea. So this is the last 24 hours. Some areas to the south have had 1.5 inches of rain. Here in Louisville, about a ½ inch. Other places with a heavier rain just to our north, close to an inch, just over an inch in Madison. Again, I'm not worried about flooding tonight because these storms are moving so fast that that's not really going to be an issue for us. Back to the radar view we go. The heavy rain moving through with some gusty winds right in the heart of the metro Louisville area. So let's zoom in to Louisville. We'll track these, give you an idea of where to see these go in terms of the movement. Again, very fast. So let's just put a little track on some of these as we go. Does everybody like the new display, right? Like, remember, it was all in the banner. It was tough to use. So now we're able to sort of draw where this warning is going. First of all, let's talk about the warning that we have. This is the severe thunderstorm warning that's in place until 12:45. It includes all, for the most part, of Jefferson County, a good chunk of Clark County, Oldham and Shelby, J-Town, Jeffersonville, New Albany, Louisville. The tornado possible tag comes because of the atmosphere. We have enough shear that it's like, okay, it's not a tornado warning. We can't really see it on the velocity, but we know the atmosphere's makeup, so we're going to say tornado would be possible if it were even to happen. Wind speeds up to 60 miles an hour. This warning, or the sort of group of warnings together, cover over 1 million people. So a lot of people in the path of this storm, and that's what we're watching as that moves through. Again, that includes Louisville. That was one thing I wanted to mention. The other would be, as this storm passes through, there's lots of lightning with this storm. Heavy rain moving through. Let me put the velocity on it. We'll pick out the greatest wind, noting that Louisville's wind speed actually is 37 miles per hour right now. Seeing some of the heavier rain pass by just south of Louisville through the highlands. That will be approaching J-Town. Now, that's going to be the next blast of wind that goes through. It's not all that outrageous. We've seen worse, certainly. The other day, without any storm at all, we saw worse. We could see higher winds tomorrow than what we're seeing tonight. There will be no storms tomorrow, but wind gusts tomorrow late morning into the afternoon could go 45 to 50 miles an hour. It's going to be possible. We're going to mix the atmosphere, strong wind field still in place throughout that time. Right now, it's a rainmaker with some wind pushing through, moving fast enough that the heaviest rain's already ended downtown. Heard it on the roof a minute ago. Can't hear it at all right now. That pushes past eastern Jefferson County. And again, once we get this through Louisville, noting that parts of Shelby and Henry counties will remain under that warning until 12:45, we're going to get you back to programming tonight. For those of you that want to stay up and watch whatever's on late on a Friday night. I suppose we're passing the Tonight Show, so it'll be Seth Meyers coming up after that. Looking at the radar, the debris, we can see a lot of reports coming in. There have been no storm reports on the wind, very few of those from the MPING data that we receive. And again, they've just reset, so we're looking at some, but not enough. That twig has been the tree limbs have been the biggest report that we've had. When we look at the lightning, there is plenty of lightning, but even that is starting to weaken. Southern Grayson County seeing some thunderstorms with lightning. Severe weather farther to the south. Let's go on a little radar tour. I'll take you into parts of northern Indiana. I didn't want to go to zoom. I just want to go to the pan. Let's pan that down. And then we're going to look at some of the SkyTrack cameras, and we'll take a look at the storm tracker too. But let's start with the warnings. Across far western, northwestern Ohio, warnings extend all the way down into Indiana. This is Indianapolis. There are no longer any tornado warnings along that line. Severe thunderstorm warnings continue. As we work our way into southern Indiana, again, we've got another line of storms, broken line of storms that will still have to move through, okay? So we're not finished just yet with the storms, but the threat of severe weather minute by minute gets lower and lower. Good news. We'll wind up seeing the thunderstorms in Ripley and Switzerland counties push over into the Cincinnati area. Those two appear to be weakening somewhat. The warning that we have in Louisville, a little on the questionable side, but they sort of noted that, hey, this is a low confidence warning. We want to put it out because we've seen the wind. We know that the potential is there because of the makeup in the atmosphere. So we're going to issue the warning. And that's where we're at with this one. There are no warnings farther to the south in our viewing area, but you get down closer to Nashville, you get into the warmer, more humid, more unstable atmosphere, and that's where we do have tornado warnings that are ongoing. These are supercell thunderstorms. That's a mean-looking storm across southern parts of Tennessee, just south of Jackson, Tennessee, south of I-40, and this is a cluster moving toward Nashville. Regardless, that's nowhere close to us, and it has no potential of impacting our weather. So that's moving away from us. The warning that we have is right over the metro with heavy rain pushing across Metro Louisville. Some folks just now waking up saying, what is that noise? And it's heavy rain and some gust of wind. The latest wind gust Louisville, 51 miles an hour. So we're getting really close to that severe threshold. Some places probably reached it. So there's the reasoning for the severe thunderstorm warning, I suppose you could say. The warning continues. Again, heavy rain approaching J-Town, Okolona, gusty winds coming into Fern Creek, Middletown. It's already past Prospect. It's past Louisville. It's past Parkland. It's past Portland. It's moving through Shively. PRP would be next in line. You've got the heavy rain knocking on your door. This sweeps across. Fern Creek would be coming up last on this. Tawana, what do you have?
We just got word that parts of the metro right now in the Plainview area, actually my neighborhood, without power right now. So we're talking around 900 customers in parts of that part of the metro right now without power. This is going to be off the South Hurstbourne Parkway area. You know where the Aldi is, right by the Barnes and Noble, close to the Kroger. Right there is where most of the power is currently off. So just looking a little bit more so at what we're seeing in terms of those power outages across the area right now, especially as we're starting to see some more of those stronger wind gusts. So in the metro, we have about 1,300 people without power. That is out of about 400,000. So that is a low number, but still, I know my fiance is probably a little confused as to why the power just went out for him. And then we're also keeping keeping an eye on what's going on in terms of Jackson County, about 500 people without power there. And we're also keeping an eye on what's going on in portions of Jennings County, a little over 200 people still without power there. So this is something that we'll continue to, we'll see in some spots. Clark County, only 9 people without power. And I'm very interested to see how Harrison County is holding out after what we saw earlier, about 15 people showing up on our census. So really what we're dealing with right now is most of the metro dealing, some of the metro dealing with some of the power outages that we're seeing right now. So most of that, around 900, right off of South Hurstbourne Parkway, but about 1,300 people in Louisville right now without power. But that part of the metro has a lot of trees, so I'm not entirely surprised that we're seeing some of that in terms of those power outages. And keep in mind, the strong wind is not just going to be with those storms that we have right now, but of course, with more of that wind that we have for tomorrow as well. That wind advisory goes until 5 p.m. tomorrow, with wind gusts tomorrow between 40 and 50 miles per hour. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. According to our newsroom, we have up to around 2,000 people right now in the metro area without power.
All right.
So that's something we'll continue to watch.
And Tuan, I'm looking at some of the latest wind reports here. We've had a wind gust of 55 miles an hour, Louisville. So that's our peak wind. Heaviest right now over the St. Matthews area. And at Bowmanfield, we're gusting to 52 knots, roughly 56 miles an hour there. That would be St. Matthews. So that's where we have the strongest of the wind. Middletown, be on guard. J-Town, Okolona, you're all going to see that strong push of wind move through. That's in Jefferson County, Oldham County, Crestwood, the heaviest rain passing by. You've probably experienced or are now experiencing some of that heavy wind. Same story along 71 and moving into LaGrange. That is where we have the strongest winds pushing through. Up toward Bedford and Trimble County, not as strong. That is the line that we're watching. That is the reason for the severe thunderstorm warning that goes until 12:45, another 15 minutes on that warning. And we have real-time reports coming in. The latest gust, you can see it above my head, 55 miles an hour. That's coming in from the Louisville International Airport. We also have very similar reports coming out of Bowmanfield over towards St. Matthews. So that's the area that we've been watching. Let me go back to our pan feature and we'll bring the radar up, get another scan. You can see it stretches through PRP, Valley Station, strong winds there too. But the strongest is in that zone from J-Town to Middletown. That's where we're seeing some very strong winds at this point. That's going to be pushing off to the south and east as it moves off to the east. We have a few trees being reported down, even as far east of us as parts of Fayette County. And that would have come in with no thunderstorms, just some really gusty winds that have been outside of the thunderstorms themselves. This is the only group of warnings that we have, cover several counties. Downtown's pretty much out of it by this point. It's moving off to our south, but anywhere from PRP to Okolona, J-Town to Middletown along, say, the Watterson and sort of bounded by the Watterson and the Gene Snyder would be the strongest of the winds pushing in. That's one zone. That's the narrow focus of the wind that's coming in. We have more wind with the front itself, and that sits back out to our west. Tawana's got to look at that.
Yeah, keeping an eye on what's going on towards portions of Jackson and Jennings County. That is where we're starting to see a little bit more of that wind picking right back up with that next batch of showers and thunderstorms that is starting to move in right ahead of the front itself. So this is going to be that last little batch of rain that we're going to be looking at for the night. So if I turn on the radar, you can certainly see some of that heavier rainfall showing up towards the Freetown area, moving towards Seymour. So remember those reds, those deeper reds, that's that heavy rain. Also some more of the gusty winds you can even see right towards the Orleans area and towards French Lick. So right there is where we're seeing some more of the strong wind gusts out ahead of that shower right there. So even the showers themselves can certainly produce quite a bit of those gusty winds as well. So we have this main line now pushing through Indiana into our northern Indiana counties. And then notice after that, it is quiet. So Kevin, we have a little while longer before we get all of this through our area, but at least we can now see that last batch finally starting to move in. So we know we're a little bit closer to the end of this. But yeah, it's that gusty wind that's we're still gonna have to keep an eye on in portions of southern Indiana, especially Jackson County and towards Orange County. And if we can pull up the storm tracker, he's on the Watterson Expressway right now, and he was saying that he was dealing with incredibly low visibility, a lot better right now, but he's heading eastbound on the Watterson Expressway as that rain continues to come down. So we have Mark Wilson driving and certainly seeing that lower visibility. If you look closely, you can even see the wind pushing some of that rain along on the roadways. So ponding on the roadways is certainly something we can see overnight for anybody who's going to be traveling late tonight into early, well, I guess it is early, and tomorrow morning, I guess now. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on that. Thankfully, no traffic issues across the metro. Still watching what's going on in parts of Bullitt County, though, in terms of that delay. But a lot of the people have been allowed to get out of that traffic mess, which is some good news, Kevin, for anyone who was in that mess on 65 because of the crashes earlier. So that's some good news for Bullitt County in terms of that. And even seeing some of that heavier rain now pushing towards the Shepherdsville area. So right where we were seeing that delay.
Yeah, we've got a 60-mile-an-hour wind gust coming out of the St. Matthews area with this line. So again, that's just above severe limits. Warnings continue to be extended farther to the east. So we've got a new severe thunderstorm warning that will be in place for those storms as they move to the north. Again, you're looking at what we've been watching. Again, Clark, Jefferson, Floyd, that one goes until 12:45. And then the next one that's issued includes parts of Carroll County and off to the east. So let me just pan this radar over. You'll see the one we're talking about. This would include well, that keeps wanting to tag the Jefferson County one. There we go. So this includes parts of Carroll, Grant, Kenton, Owen counties. That goes until 1:30. So for the most part, that one's outside of our viewing area, outside of Carroll County. When we look at what's happening here, it's all about the storm passing through Jefferson County with 50 to 60-mile-an-hour winds. We've measured them, so this isn't a guess anymore. We know we've had 55-mile-an-hour winds at the airport, and over at Bowman Field, we know we've had 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Those have all been measured as these storms continue to move through. I'm going to zoom back in just a bit, and then we'll take a look at the velocity, show you the highest wind gusts. Let's start with Jefferson County. For folks that may just be waking up, it's heavy rain and wind. It is a severe thunderstorm warning, but nothing outrageous. We've noted that we've had some twigs, some small limbs broken. We've got a few power outages, but this is nothing like they've seen across parts of the country. It's not a normal scenario that would be on with nonstop weather coverage. So I don't want that to scare you that we're on. It just happens to be late night on a very volatile day. And I just know a lot of people are waking up, want the weather information. We're going to let you know what's happening. Most of you head back to bed and you're going to be okay. Some of you still have the wind to go. We're seeing some of that wind push through GE, Okolona, approaching Fern Creek, J-Town, Middletown. Wind moving in along with some heavy rain. Speaking of, you can take a look at the rain. That's pushing through that same general area, picking up in those same places I mentioned. That's the leading edge of the wind as well. So it's a wall of water and wind moving into your area that stretches across a good chunk of Metro Louisville. When we pan the radar around, you're going to notice the warnings extend farther to the east, including Eastwood, including parts of Spencer County, Shelby County, up into Centerfield and parts of Oldham County. There's LaGrange, Crestwood, it's past you. Goshen, Skylight, Greenhaven, all past you. Mainly south of 71 at this point, at least across Oldham County. Then you get into Henry County, places like Pendleton's over top of you with heavy rain and wind. Smithfield and Newcastle, it's approaching you. Those are a few places that we're watching in terms of the heavy wind around the area. Back to our home view, you can see the storms passing through. Once they get through Louisville, as they weaken, we're going to bed. Everything should be decent for the remainder of the night. Technically, the tornado watch is in place until 3 o'clock. We still have this band of storms to go through. There are no warnings along that. There will be some gusty winds with that. But the threat of severe weather minute by minute as the night goes on is getting lower and lower and lower. That's the good news. Areas to our south, you see Bowling Green, warning getting closer to you. We've got a new severe thunderstorm warning coming out for that general area. That includes Butler, Edmondson, and Warren counties. So we're watching those stronger storms to the south. They're just south of our viewing area. Next in line for us would be parts of Greene County over into Taylor and Adair counties if that holds together. That's the zone that would impact. So we're tracking some severe thunderstorm warnings for the overnight hours. Again, as they push to the east, they will gradually be weakening as they move on through. Tawana, something new?
So we're seeing now more power outages in portions of the metro. We're now up to 6,300 without power in the Louisville metro area, according to LG&E. And a lot of that is focused in on Anchorage, Middletown, and now the Hurstbourne area. That is where a lot of those power outages are showing up right now. And they happened really as that initial batch of wind, it seemed like, moved into that area. So that is something that we have to keep an eye on, more of the power outages as we deal with more of that wind moving through the area. So that's something, so it's basically this area that I have up on your screen. So from Anchorage over towards Middletown, right on either side of Shelbyville Road, and then up Hurstbourne Parkway towards the Plainview area. That's where we're seeing a lot of those power outages showing up. So we're now up to 6,300 in the Louisville metro without power. Good news is that this is quickly moving out, but we can certainly see some more of those power outages as well as this batch of storms starts to move further to the east as well. And we're still watching what's happening for those of you further to the north in terms of the gusty winds, in terms of the heavier rain. So we're starting to see that moving into portions of Jennings County, Jackson County, as well in Indiana, back towards portions of Orange County, so northwest of Paoli, dealing with that. And if we look at the velocity, you can certainly see those streaks of, there we go, the streaks of green showing up from Paoli all the way up towards Seymour, indicating those strong winds starting to move in. So a second batch
and we've got a measurement on those, so this will make it a little more ground truth. But we've got 27 knots out of French Lick. That would make that 31 miles an hour. So
yes,
that line with 31 mile an hour winds right there in French Lick. So that's a little more sort of real truth coming in from some of the actual air measurements as that system pushes through. So that's the one behind the one we're watching.
So we're just going to have to keep an eye on the wind in terms of potential power outages, because we know that they're going to come, the wind is going to increase again as we head into tomorrow as well. So all of those branches that may have been jostled by the storms tonight may be shaken loose as we get into tomorrow as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, and then more of those storms as well. And just keep in mind as well, in terms of the warnings that we have, is just really with the initial batch of showers and thunderstorms, not so much with the second line, the secondary line that's moving in with the cold front itself. But of course, we're having to keep an eye on what's happening, as you mentioned, further to the south towards Bowling Green, as that tries to maybe move towards maybe LaRue and Greene counties, as well as we head over the next 45 minutes to an hour.
One thing you may notice is that now all of our counties are shaded in red, indicating that the tornado watch has been and continues to be expanded farther to the east. That's now including the Lexington area. It includes the southern part of the viewing area, Greene, Taylor, Adair counties, all of that staying at the same time, which is 3 a.m. is when the expiration time. They'll start to trim some of these back counties because the threat of severe weather will be ending there first as the night wears on. Right now, we're all still under that tornado watch until 3 o'clock, but for the most part, it's this round of thunderstorms passing through with the severe thunderstorm warnings that we're watching. I promise you I'd get you through Louisville, and then as the night unfolds, we'll be here if we need to jump back on. But for all intents and purposes, coming up at 12:45, we're going to get you back to programming. So I want to take the storm tracker one more time before we get to that point. Let me know when it's ready, and then and there it is. And you can see across the metro, there's still plenty of traffic out. You've got some folks with their hazard lights on. We have heavy rain coming down across parts of the area. Where is the storm tracker?
He should still be on the Waterston Expressway, it looks like, heading eastbound. So he should be getting closer, if I'm remembering correctly, towards the Taylorsville Road area, if I'm correct.
Well, we're coming up on the sign there, and you're exactly right. So that's where he is. Good call on that. We're watching just to show you what it's like outside. It's not anything out of the ordinary what we'd see in a strong thunderstorm pushing through Louisville. We have measured wind speeds of 55 miles an hour at the Louisville International Airport. We've measured over in St. Matthews 60 mile per hour winds. These are less than they were with the windstorm we had just a few weeks ago. These, in some cases, maybe not those numbers, but for most of you, you haven't hit that mark. So tomorrow is going to be a windy day. With that said, we could have even higher winds for some of you tomorrow than you've had today. You can see that thunderstorm moving across south, eventually into southeast Jefferson County, and that will continue moving off to the east. The severe thunderstorm warning in place for about another 2 minutes until 12:45. Tawana, anything final from you before we sort of toss back to the late night programming.
Just keeping an eye on these power outages. I know a lot of people in the Plainview, Hurstbourne Parkway area still dealing with those power outages. So I'm looking at the LG&E map, and they are saying that they are assessing the situation and then working to get the time of restoration, because so far on their website there is not one. But in parts of the Plainview area, I'm getting people texting me that some of the power is coming back on. So that is certainly some good news as we continue to watch this cold front finally moving towards us. So we'll, of course, be watching this closely as the night wears on. Make sure you have the alerts are up on your phone, notifications turned on. Make sure your location is turned on in case anything does to turn severe in your area. I want to make sure you can still give you updates as the night goes along. Kevin.
All right. Thanks, Tawana. Again, as these storms just track through the metro, we're right through J-Town, Middletown. We'll see if the warning has expired or if they extend it. As long as they expire the warning for Louisville and a good chunk of our counties, we'll get you back to programming. All of this is weakening as expected. For those of you who've been with us all day long, we thank you for watching. We know that as the day has unfolded, we've been sort of keeping an eye and keeping the messaging the same. Along and off to our east of I-65, the threat was going to be a little lower than it was to the west. And when you look at what's happened out to the west today, especially across parts of Illinois, Iowa, into Arkansas, even northern Indiana, wow, it was just a rough day in terms of weather. Lots of damage in several communities across those locations. For us, we've seen as the storms have moved through, they still had some wind. There's no doubt the wind field is strong, but the rain earlier today really helped out, and the temperature being kept down because of that helped out as well. There wasn't as much energy to feed off of. It's 12:44. We're coming up looking at some of the damage reports. Lots of lightning, but not even as, I mean, there's more to the south than there is even to the north now. Very little even back across that next line to move through. We've got some snapped tree limbs, some sort of trash cans and twigs tossed around. But outside of that, we haven't had much in the way of reports, at least in our area. 1 more minute's left on the severe thunderstorm warning for us here in Louisville, and we'll see if they extend that farther to the east. And there it is. It's already gone now. The severe thunderstorm warning has ended for Metro Louisville. We're going to be here tonight to keep you updated. If we need to jump back on TV, we will. We obviously have our 24/7 weather channel. If you're looking for constant weather information, you'll find it there. We're going to say goodnight for now. And we've got a new warning that just came out. So let me tell you about that, and then we'll say goodnight. These thunderstorm warnings will keep popping up as this system passes by. One more time for Henry and Shelby counties. This includes Eminence, Newcastle, and Pleasureville. That tornado possible tag is just sort of reminiscent of what we've seen because of the structure in the atmosphere. We've got a lot of wind and a lot of wind shear, but it's mainly a wind event as it pushes through. Possibility of 60-mile-an-hour winds with that. The heavy rain that will be passing off to the east. We'll be here to keep you updated if we need to jump back on. For now, the tornado watch will go until 3 a.m., gradually fading out as the night goes on. And just remember, as every hour passes by, the threat of severe weather will be easing. We'll say goodbye for now. For Tawana Andrew, I'm Kevin Harnett, and for all of us here at WAVE, we'll be back on as necessary. I'm hopeful that we don't have to jump back on for you tonight. Thanks for watching.